All right, everybody, welcome back to another episode of the WatchWell Podcast. My name is Parker, and I am one of your co-hosts. Here is my other co-host, Nick. Nick,
Are we going to do it again?
how was your week?
It's deja vu all over again.
It's deja vu all over again, yeah.
You know, weirdly, it might seem odd, but my week has been exactly like the last episode you asked me.
Pretty similar.
Yeah, it's a little strange. But
A little strange. It gets strange when you do two recordings on one day, I guess.
Yeah, and when you still ask, how was your week, when it's the same week.
But we have to keep the tradition going.
Yeah. So
Traditions are good.
Ish.
Fair enough. We also have another guest in the studio today, my lovely bride, Kayla. How are you?
Hi, I'm good. How are you guys?
Great. So today we are actually we're going to do a movie review through the lens of truth on Crazy Stupid Love, starring who? Steve Carell, Emma Stone, Ryan Gosling.
Julianne
Moore.
Yeah, is that her last name? Yeah.
Julianne Moore,
right.
I think. Yeah.
Yeah.
What a crazy part she plays. Let's see. And we didn't want to do this movie without a female because it's a chick flick and we wanted to maintain our man cards, right?
Yeah.
Acceptable.
Yeah, it was between Crazy Stupid Love and What Women Want. And two dudes talking about what women want didn't seem very fitting. So
Yeah.
we ended up going with Crazy Stupid Love and inviting Kayla on the podcast.
Although that
So
does
welcome.
kind of fit in line with that movie, with What Women Want.
It does. It does. Cool.
Maybe next time.
Maybe next time. Right. So, cool. Real quick, before we get started, we left a disclaimer at the end of the last episode, and I wanted to start with it on this episode. And I wanted to just throw this out there. It might come across a little harsh. That's okay. But if you are a regular viewer of the WatchWell podcast, we want to ask that you share the podcast. And also, if you don't mind going into whatever podcast platform, if you're just listening to the audio podcast, go into whatever podcast platform you use and give us a review. 5-star reviews help the algorithm. It helps us get pushed to more people. And then also, just remember the like button is nice, but it does nothing to help us reach more people. So the biggest like you could give us would be to share the podcast on YouTube, and we would be very grateful if you did that. So, starting off on that, let's get into the movie. Nick, do you want to run through characters? How do you want to start this one out, buddy?
That is a good question. I'm actually looking up some basic info about it. So, just to get started, this is how we usually start. We didn't start the last episode this way, but it is rated PG-13. It's a romance. A lot of sexual jokes and sexual situations. So with that being said, Plugged In Movie Reviews does not have a review because it's too old of a movie for that. But Common Sense Media does recommend that no one under 14 watch this movie.
I agree with that.
I'm
my number was going to be 15.
I was thinking freshman in high school, so right around 14, 15.
And I would imagine that if it had like one more cuss word, it's probably rated R. Like, just it seems like it's right on the verge of.
Or if a like a sensual scene went a little bit further, for sure. So again, Nick usually offers this disclaimer: any movie that we ever review is never an endorsement to watch it. You have to kind of search your own convictions and scripture and your own opinions and feelings towards different movies that we review. It's never an endorsement to watch a movie that we review, but we want to go before Hollywood, as Paul did, go before the men of Athens and use their art against them to show what they already know to be true, and that is Christ is real. He died for our sins, and the Christian God is the one and only God worth worshiping.
Yep.
So, Nick, I actually want to ask you this question to kind of kick it off. You're driving down the road on a rainy night, and your wife turns to you and says, "I've had an affair, and it's your fault." How do you proceed?
Well, I
Do you
probably
pull a Steve Carell? That's
I probably would not jump out of the car and roll.
So you're not going to jump out of the car?
Well, maybe I would. Who knows?
Only if she keeps talking, right?
That the shock in that moment is, I mean, it's very. I don't know if I could predict my response. Maybe I would jump out of the car and roll, or I mean, I really don't know. So
it felt like a real reaction. Like it felt like honest that just like jump out of the car. Like that felt like a real moment. Now I don't know if we see people jumping out of cars every day, but
well, I agree with that because, and I think Steve Carell, as funny as the guy is and as crazy as he is, he's actually a really good actor.
Oh yeah,
and I think that the way he portrayed that was just his soul was lost.
Yeah,
and that's why he's going to jump out the car. He just was defeated as a man.
Yep.
And that's so true, Yep.
That's
so true. So I wanted to start that off by asking you that question because I wanted to know if you would jump out of the car. That's essentially what she said, right? I've cheated on you, I've committed adultery, and it's your fault.
Well, he says something like, "What do you want?" They were talking about something else. Like, I don't remember the whole conversation, but he asked the question, "What do you want?" And then her answer is, "I want a divorce."
Right.
Yeah.
And then he didn't want to give it to her, or there was a discrepancy, something, and then driving home, she just was going on and on because it's what she wanted.
Yeah.
And then he jumps out the car, which I thought was really funny. So, yeah,
Michael Scott rolling out of the car.
Scott. Yeah. So, adultery, man, that's a big one.
Yeah. So that kind of sets the stage for the whole thing, right? Is his heartache, his it's like, okay, here's this inciting incident, this moment where his entire life kind of falls apart, and then from that moment you're kind of left with, okay, now what do I do? Now what is my life supposed to be like? Now what does it mean to have love and relationships, and what's my relationship with my kids like? So it sets the stage for everything that comes later, and especially when he meets Ryan Gosling's character.
Yes.
So the womanizer, the good looking, goes home with a different girl every night. So the stage is set for that meeting.
Sorry.
Go ahead.
You okay?
Yeah.
Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off. Okay, so I was just going to say, I think it really sets the stage for what manliness is. So
Explain.
the whole premise is wife cheats, and then she essentially blames it on him because he's got no direction, he's got no nothing, which is a complete lack of justification for adultery. There's no excuse for doing that, man or woman. But then the movie does a shift where we start to question, we start to look at Ryan Gosling's character, Kayla, Langenfurter or whatever his name is, Lindhagen, and
David Lindhagen,
right? And he kind of, the movie portrays him as this embodiment of manliness.
Mm-hmm.
So then the question becomes, what is manliness? Is that true, or what is manliness?
Mm-hmm.
And who is the real man in the film? Because I would say that according to biblical standards, Michael Scott is more of a man. Steve Carell is more of a man in this, even in his marriage that seems to be failing, is more of a man because he's still providing, he's still working. He has commitments. He has commitments. He's responsible. He may be emotionally absent, but he's still fulfilling the duty of the husband, as opposed to what the movie is trying to portray as manliness, the guy who takes a different chick home every night and is very smooth talking, lack of integrity, kind of really good looking guy that has no responsibility, no integrity, no consistency. And that's what we're supposed to emulate as manliness. And then we'll get later into the movie, it kind of flips with the hook and the big reveal. But maybe we start the conversation there. What are your thoughts on manliness? What Scripture says is manliness, and what did you think of the dynamics of those two characters as the film was portraying Lindhagen as the man that we should try to be?
Hold on, Lindhagen was the guy that she cheated with.
Oh, that's right. I'm sorry.
So
Cal
is Steve Carell.
Okay.
He's the main protagonist in this movie. And
right.
Then Ryan Gosling plays Jacob.
Jacob, that's right. So when I was saying Lindhagen, I meant Jacob. So thank you for clearing that up.
So Ryan Gosling's character.
Yes, Ryan Gosling's character.
Okay, so that's
the man.
Okay.
Is the man. So
the man.
David Lindhagen.
And I'm sure
I did not mean that.
Many people in his frat have called him the man.
Yeah.
Assuming that he's a frat, that he was in a frat or whatever. But
right. So I hope that clears everything up. When I was saying David Lindhagen, I actually meant Ryan Gosling's character.
Yeah.
Jacob. So
I mean, it sets the stage for that very well. And it's definitely from the beginning, it's setting you up for that turn that you mentioned. But I mean, I don't want to get too far into this yet, but I actually have a question for Kayla, since she is the female on the episode.
Female,
and that is just, what thoughts come to mind when you're introduced to the Jacob character?
He is the stereotypical, like, good-looking guy that all the guys want to be and all the girls want to be with.
Right.
Like, that's exactly how he walks in the scene. I think they even changed the music. It's dark lighting. Like, he's this moody, suave character that just comes in. But if you were... So, I mean, I'm not going to go sleep with just anybody, but, like, that's the kind of guy that you would go just have a one-night stand with. Like, is that kind of character.
Right.
But if you were to look for somebody for more than that, initially, I would say he's not that kind of guy. Like, you would not be taking him home to meet your parents, because he initially, you see him every night talking to all the girls in the bar and, like, being this suave guy.
He definitely is the frequent
flyer.
Frequent flyer.
Yeah. And
so I guess my question would be to break that down even further. So what about that character? And maybe it's hard for you to answer this because you aren't that type of girl. You've never really been that type of girl. But what draws women to that, as I can delineate between the one-night stand guy and then the guy I want to marry?
Well, what makes his character actually interesting is, as they show his interactions in the bar, a lot of it is he's a smooth talker too. Mm-hmm. So he's not just a look.
Right.
He's not just a walk in and sweep you off your feet and off you go. Like, he can actually intellectually make these girls feel like they're it. And that he hasn't just slept with 100 other girls than 100 nights before. Like, he literally will make them feel like you're so special. You're the most beautiful thing in here. And that's what women seek after, especially in a bar when you're single and you're looking for love. What you look for is that affirmation from a man that is, you're beautiful, you're worthy. And I think that he has figured out, to his own advantage, that game of how to talk to women to make them feel like they're special.
Mm-hmm.
Did that answer your question, Nick?
Yeah, for sure. So he's essentially Barney Stinson. from How I Met Your Mother.
Right. Yeah, you're right. That's a good connection.
That's exactly.
Absolutely. It's better looking, but
yeah. Well, that's part of what makes How I Met Your Mother funny is who Barney is. But so
show.
Hey, sleep to it. Now I forget what I was going to say. Okay, so when he first meets Steve Carell in the bar, Steve Carell's like complaining about his wife cheating on him and bearing his soul in public and depressing everyone in the bar. And then Ryan Gosling's Jacob walks up to him and they have an interaction. But then when it finally gets to the point where Jacob is like teaching him, this is how you interact and pick up women. A lot of it's like this combination of making the woman feel wonderful while also making them not feel too wonderful. Like also taking them down a peg. So that's why, and that's another reason why I compared him to Barney Stinson, because Barney Stinson does the same thing in How I Met Your Mother, like that strategy. So why would that be appealing? Like I really, and I mean that, like, because I don't have an answer. I don't really understand this tearing someone down a little bit is what's going to attract them to you. So is there something about the nature of women that's appealing to generally?
I think it is, and I think that it's why most movies, it's like the girls always want the bad boys and things like that, is I think that there's something to that, like that tearing down that you see in this movie is women biblically are to be submissive to a man. And they want, like, we are created to be submissive. We are not created to be the dominant. We are created to be a helper, a partner, submitting to a biblical man. And so I think that when you're lost, it comes out as like he has dominance and confidence and this presence over me, that it's okay if it's a little rude, if I could submit myself to that guy. I think there's something there that when you're lost and you're searching for love so hard and so intensely that you lose that perfect hierarchy of how God created man and woman. And so I think that that's what we see come out ugly, and why women stay in abusive relationships, and why women like go after the guy that's a jerk, is I think that there's some sort of like desire to have someone dominant over them, because Cal at the beginning is so submissive and passive that
but you would say that that's not attractive either.
That's what I'm saying.
Right.
He's to the opposite extreme. He's too passive and too submissive that's why his wife blames him.
Right.
And basically he's not being a man in their relationship and in their family. He is not being that dominant man. And so then his wife cheats on him with a guy who at work, she knows through work, is this strong, confident, kind of domineering type man.
Right.
So it's that balance of like swinging one way or the other. And so normally women, when they're lost, would rather go after a guy that's too dominant than too submissive.
So you think it's an overcorrection?
I do. And I think that
I have a question to follow up with that. So do you think that there's any, so the way Nick presented it was there's a building up, but then not too much, and there's a little bit of a tearing down to keep a woman within these two boundaries, right? Not to inflate the ego of the woman, but not tear her down completely. And it seems to, as the closer those two bars get, the better chances the guy has. Do you think that with that strategy, there is there's a need for the man where, oh, he's building me up, but I don't fully have him, and that makes me want him.
Oh, absolutely.
So therefore absolutely. The value comes from like kind of like you always want what you can't have kind of thing. So then the attraction starts there.
Yeah, and you got to play the cat and mouse game. I mean, that's kind of what it is there's a little bit of a chase. There's got to be a pursuit. I mean, that's what women want to be pursued. They want to be, but they don't want to necessarily be completely fawned over all the time either, because we're not perfect beings. And I think that there's some part of us that realizes that we're not perfect, and maybe that's because we know we're all made in the image of God, but we know we fall short of that.
Right.
And so I don't think anybody out there thinks they're perfect. Even the people who act the most confident, I don't think anybody really truly thinks that they're perfect human beings. And I think that's the God in everybody that we know we're not perfect. But yeah, there's definitely a game to that attraction and that kind of build you up, tear you down thing. But it's interesting how then when you get into a marriage, it tends to be different. It almost changes. So it's like when you're dating, you want to play this chase, pursuit, cat and mouse game. But then it's like once you're married, it's like I want you to pursue me, but the Bible also says not to tear down your wife in front. Like it's not right to do that. You're supposed to build her up as perfect.
Right.
So it's interesting how it kind of changes, or maybe our culture has made it that cat and mouse kind of game.
Right.
Do you think another piece of and this isn't just for Kayla, but just in general, is it the outward appearance of strength? Like that is also a little bit of an attraction. Like this person, they walk into a room and they look strong, confident. They have it together. Like this is somebody that I could follow.
But that's so interesting though, because he didn't have it together.
Right, but it's the outward appearance.
But that's your point. It's the appearance of confidence is attractive, not that you're actually confident.
And that's what he was teaching.
So then how much? Yeah. So then how much of that? Yeah, it's just so interesting. I have to think about that for a minute.
Yeah.
He was teaching Cal how to look the part. He's like, your clothes are outdated. They don't fit you right. He went and gave him a makeover and sent him back into the bar with all of this confidence. He's the same guy he was 2 days ago. He's still getting divorced.
That's a good point.
His wife still cheated on him. He's living in an apartment and doesn't get to see his kids every day anymore. And, so
the babysitter's hitting on him.
Oh gosh, yeah. And so he's still going through hard life, and he's still the same person, but he just dressed him up and gave him a shot of confidence and said, "Get out there, bud."
Yeah, fake confidence.
Exactly.
Absolutely fake confidence.
Yeah, it's so interesting
because when you see Jacob as he starts to experience a relationship that he actually wants to be a part of, he completely loses it. He loses any composure whatsoever, and he loses his ability to even judge what should I do next. He completely falls apart basically when he's finally looking. So that outward confidence, one reason that it might be a different girl every night is because he's just repeating the exact same routine with somebody different, because if it ever gets any different, any deeper or further than that, then he's going to be revealed to be somebody who has got nothing together and doesn't have any confidence, isn't strong at all, and doesn't have any real quality of manhood to speak of. It really is only the outward appearance of it, and if you ever get deeper than that, then he's basically revealed to just kind of be an empty shell that no one would actually want to be a part of. And maybe the reason for that outward appearance of confidence is because he's compensating for his actual insecurities.
Right.
He's not actually
Well, he's medicating. He's definitely medicating with women and alcohol and that feeling of status for sure.
Mm-hmm.
But it's interesting that none of that matters when he finds the right girl. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know if we want to go into that yet, but there's something about the shallow man finding the girl that captivates his heart, becoming a deeper man.
Mm-hmm.
It's kind of like a domino effect, you know? It's like, okay, now I have, like, it's her. She's different than all of these other women, but now I have motivation to be even better and actually break out of just the shell and be really me and I guess have something to live for. I don't, is that probably a good way to say it?
Yeah. Yeah, he meets Hannah, which it's funny how she goes into their initial meeting just having broken up with her high status lawyer boyfriend that she thought was going to propose to him.
Right.
Propose to her. And he offers her a job at the law firm instead of proposing, and she like flips her lid. She loses it. And she had expectations that he was not wanting to meet. And so they break up, and she goes to the bar with her friend just to get drunk and maybe find a random guy. So she goes with the exact intentions of Jacob that Jacob likes and wanted.
Right.
And then it turns into he can't stop thinking about her. And
but
it turns
so here's the next
into
question.
a real relationship.
Why did he, I guess for lack of a better term, stumble upon her? So like what?
He didn't stumble upon her. She threw herself at him.
Well, that wasn't until later, right? Because the initial meeting, didn't she say, no, I've got to leave?
Oh, that was before her. So that he met her at the bar before she had dinner with her boyfriend and their whole team to congratulate her for
and then
for graduating.
Right.
So they had their congratulatory dinner. She thought she was about to get engaged, and then she didn't. So she broke up with him and ran back to the hot guy at the bar. And that's what her intention was, to go have fun.
But I guess
she was medicating with him.
Oh, yeah.
Right. She was medicating, but I'm talking about that initial meeting where, so we just got done talking about how women, to some degree, there's I can't have him, he's building me up, but he kind of cuts me down, and I am attracted to that because I want him to fully want me without fully wanting me, or something like that, right?
Mm-hmm.
Isn't she giving him the same thing when she's like, no, I got to go home? So he didn't win the girl in that moment.
She also had a boyfriend at the time.
Right. I guess that's fair.
But
I guess that's fair. I forgot about that.
Same concept. I mean, it's same concept.
But like he couldn't get over the fact that, I got rejected. So now I want what it's the same thing. I want what I can't have. Yeah. Right?
Yep.
So I wonder what it's almost it's got to be a pride thing for both, right? It's why am I not good enough, and I want it because now I need the self-satisfaction of being good enough to achieve that level of person.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
It's very interesting. How true do you think all of that is, Nick? Do you think a lot of that is just the movie being the movie, taking some creative licensure and being over dramatic? Or do you think that there's a real sense of that in life?
No, I think there's a real sense of that in life, and that's what makes the movie relatable.
That's what I imagine you saying.
Yeah, I think there's a real sense of that. And so the more, especially being a comedy, the more relatable it is, the more you're going to laugh at those situations.
Right.
And I think that's true of just about any comedy, whether it's a romantic comedy or just a comedy in general. Is like part of the reason you laugh at these things is because they feel so real, and the way they're kind of revealing it. So I think there's definitely some reality there. There's definitely and it's hard for me to say because I was never really a part of that scene where people are going out to bars and getting and trying to pick up women and things like that. So it's hard for me to say like how realistic that aspect of it is, but the underlying desires, like those are, I mean, I can't imagine anything more real, to be quite honest. I think that's and that's one of the things that has stuck with me since probably the first time that I saw this movie, which was probably when it came out in 2011. And it was like just how hopelessly we continuously search for what we think love is. And sometimes we have that, we accurately are searching for love, like something that is actually love. And sometimes we're like running towards a counterfeit that's not really love, but it's still the underlying desire. Kind of like what we talked about with the Jesus Revolution. What were the people searching for? They were searching for God. They were just running to a counterfeit, and that was drugs and the experience that the psychedelics and things would give them. They were still searching for God, but they were running to a counterfeit. Same thing here is just how hopeless we are to search for love, and how that can be the thing that we run to in that pursuit can be such a counterfeit version of love, which is exactly what's personified initially in Jacob's character, is that counterfeit idea of what love is or could be. Yet even Jacob, even though he would have never said at the beginning of the movie, deep down is searching for companionship and love and somebody to understand him and know him and things like that. He's just so insecure that it can't be more than just one night.
And it comes easy for him.
Yeah.
The relationship part is what he had no knowledge of. He had no basis in, so he was scared of it. And so because of that, he never really went to that point. But he was successful in the other pursuits that he had of one night stands and things like that. And so that was easy.
So I want to ask this, and maybe I'm going to ask it and both of you can kind of list it out. But because I think all of this conversation and discussion kind of hones in onto the question, what makes a valuable man? Because, and I think that we should list those characteristics, because what the movie portrays is the valuable man is the one with status, money, and looks.
At least at the beginning, that's what they're saying.
Yeah, at least at the beginning. And the man that is responsible, the man that is consistent, the man that is the family man, is the man that is boring. And and we'll get into my issues with Cal's wife later in kind of the rhetoric of the movie, but so I would ask you, what makes a man valuable?
To me specifically, or is that to either one of us?
That's for both of you.
I mean, I would say you kind of started to say it by how they transform, like how the movie progresses, is that you see the importance of the consistent family man. Like the confidence matters, but it's a different confidence than what they portray in Jacob's character. And so I think it's hard to put that one in words of like the difference of the confidence, but it's that external versus internal confidence. And I think the external is what you see at the beginning.
Okay.
But other values that make a man, like, is that what you're saying? Like other?
Yeah. So, like, for instance, one of the ways that I would answer the question is if we look at like rejoicing in our own sufferings and staying faithful to something. Now, I know the movie doesn't have any biblical basis or anything like that, but Cal, in spite of his wife cheating on him, and despite all of the insecurities, I mean, probably some types of depression, lack of mission or purpose, he is consistent and faithful to his family the entire time.
Mm-hmm.
That's got to equate to some value, more so than that of the man who has status and is running through women with no responsibility or accountability.
Mm-hmm. And I think you see it in Lindhagen that he has no respect for the family system either.
That's a good point. That's a very good point.
Because he continues to pursue her. So she cheats on her husband with him, and then she says, "Okay, I can't keep doing this." At one point, and he continues to pursue after her.
Right.
And so to me, that's just utter disrespect for a family.
Well, it's in violation of, love God and love neighbor. It's
right.
like basic.
Right. And so, I mean, they're not divorced. They're still together, and it's tearing apart a family. So, I mean, the initial sin is bad, but then he continues to not have any respect of the family unit.
Right.
And I think
I'm justified because you're not happy with your husband.
Right. Right. And so I think that is a negative view, and I think she starts to see that as well, that he just has no care for her wishes or her family's. And I think that's what you see in Cal is that he slips a little and has a one-night stand, and
a regrettable one at that, probably.
A crazy one.
That girl was a nut job.
And I think that after that, you see him know that that's not who he is, and that's not the right thing to do. No matter how cool he thinks Ryan Gosling's character Jacob is, he knows that that's not really what he wants, and that's not really who he is. Because then doesn't he go back and take care of the house?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And he calls his wife, and she even is regretful, and she calls him to ask about the pilot light for the furnace.
Yep.
And he helps her, and he just stays there, and he's just unwavering the entire movie.
He has the one night that he sleeps with somebody else. I'd say that's
right.
There's some waver there.
I guess that's fair. There is some wavering there, but the undertone of that is I don't know. I just, you kind of feel bad for the guy.
Oh, 100%. You feel the whole time like you're just like, oh, this poor guy is just going through misery. And then like when he's like sad and mopey at the bar, he can't even pick anybody up at the bar, kind of thing. Like she's off sleeping with Lindhagen and he can't pick anybody up. And then he finally like gets to be like a sharp looking dad, like kind of character. And it's like, okay, like it's picking up for him, like life is good, and then you're like, oh, he just is sleeping with him because Jacob told him to, like kind of thing. So like you almost write it off,
right?
That he's
you start playing the justification Olympics, because it's like, well, husband is not who wife thought he would be, and she's bored, so she needs to cheat, and then she's justified because her husband's not doing what he is supposed to do. Third party guy who's cheating with the wife is justified because husband's not doing what he's supposed to do. Wife cheated on husband, so now husband's justified to cheat on wife. And that's just not how that's not how it's supposed to be.
Love keeps no record.
Yeah, like if you're in a marriage, that is your own little, I think John Lovell just dropped a podcast, The John Lovell Show, and he actually said that once you get married, you create your own little oasis with your wife and your family, and it's separate from everybody else.
Yep.
And I love that.
There is no one else
that
out
depiction
there.
of the little oasis with just you two.
Yep.
And I thought that was really good. So yeah, it's just you play the justification game because, well, you wronged me, so now I'm justified in wronging you.
Right.
And we talked about this in the Batman episode, that vengeance is the Lord's, and he'll come back and he'll deal with every sin, and he'll also deliver, with the death of Christ, he'll deliver the mercy and grace according to his will. So it's just interesting the way it's all predicted, and I love the multiple different storylines is in the movie.
Yeah. How they all intertwine and
right.
And but as the movie progresses, I think that's where you were going, Nick, the value of men and kind of how it progresses and changes throughout the story.
Yeah. And so I would a few verses that came to mind. 1 Corinthians 16, verse 13 and 14, be watchful, stand firm in the faith, act like men, be strong, let all that you do be done in love. And I think that is the exact opposite of Jacob at the beginning of the movie.
Yes, it is.
So he's presenting himself, and other people look at him as, the ultimate man, but the reality is nothing he's doing is being done in love. It's being done out of insecurity, out of selfishness, out of pride, whatever you want to call it. But that talk about the qualities and value of men. A man should be watchful, should be able to stand firm. And right there you see that's probably an area where Cal's character is falling short, and that's part of the problem between him and his wife is he doesn't stand firm. There seems to be a lack of, even though, yes, he's providing for his family, he does love his wife, but there doesn't seem to be much conviction in him until he loses everything, right? Until he loses his family. He seems like kind of a weak kind of guy. Pushover. Yeah, he doesn't really stand for anything, and so he's not strong. And then you have Jacob, who appears to be strong, but it's kind of revealed that he's not really all that as strong as he appears to be. But then that aspect of let all that you do be done in love. If love is the driving force, then love pushes you to have conviction. Love pushes you to be strong when strength is called for. Love pushes you to be what you've been called to be and to stand in strength and all of that stuff. So that is what a man is called to be, and it has to be from a place of love. And then just a couple other things. Psalm 1, blessed is the man who walks not in the counsel of the wicked, nor stands in the way of sinners, nor sits in the seat of scoffers, but his delight is in the law of the Lord, and on his law he meditates day and night. He is like a tree planted by streams of water that yields its fruit in its season, and its leaf does not wither, and all that he does he prospers. The wicked are not so, but are like chaff that the wind drives away. So just blessed is the man who walks not in the counsel of the wicked. So there has to be in order for a man to actually live in true manhood, I guess, he can't be pursuing wicked things or taking advice from wicked people like Jacob at the beginning of the movie. And he can't be looking for fulfillment where sinners look for fulfillment, like a bar, for example, in the movie. And he shouldn't be sitting in the seat of scoffers making fun of everyone who's struggling around him, kind of irreverent to those who have needs around him. But his delight should be in the law of the Lord. So he should be fully committed and should find joy in the Word of God and meditate on it day and night, constantly, in season, out of season, all the time. And that is what produces the type of attributes that people need, or the world needs, in a man. That's how a man finds value and produces and adds value to the people around him through those things.
And I think you're talking about not taking counsel from the wicked, and you called Jacob wicked. And I think that's where this movie does a really good job of trying to make him look like a good guy and not the bad guy. Mm-hmm. Where at the beginning of the movie, he was not a good person. Like the things he was doing were not biblical, were not beneficial. But he goes and almost Mr. Miyagi's Cal to help him and to try and coach him to find his manhood. And you're like, yeah, like you start feeling like this, oh, he's such a good guy, look at him, help him. And it's like, but he's helping him find his confidence, which is good, but his methods are wicked, really. And they're for the selfish gain and not for what's best for the family. What's best for the family is get back to your wife.
Right. I want to ask this question before we get too much more down the road. Why do the two of you think Jacob helps Cal? Why waste his time?
The silence means it's a good question.
It is a good question.
So what benefit outside of just the plot? It's convenient for the plot. What benefit why do you think Jacob helps Cal? What benefit does it get to him? Because that's the type of guy he is, right? So if he's not the type of guy to just do things unless it, self-serves himself. So what's the motive?
I actually think it's not selfish because there is no benefit to him. There's no benefit to him if he helps this guy out or not. He gets no more girls because of it. He gets no money or status or anything from it. He gets a good feel. I think he gets a good feeling from it. It's that, okay, I've medicated these other ways. Like, let's try to do some good to see if I can make myself feel better and feel like a good person. But I think that there might be some part of him that's like, that sees Cal as like, you're the kind of guy that had it all, and that we young guys strive to be in that position, but we don't want to end up like you. So there's got to be hope for me if I can fix you and get you back on your feet.
Okay.
Like, he's seeing future him, because really, if you're out there looking for love as desperately as he is, like, you are hopeful for that perfect family situation and being the man and having the kids and the white picket fence. And I mean, that's the dream. Like, that's your goal. Your goal isn't to be 50 years old and still picking up girls at the bar. You want that life. You want that family.
Your winning percentage goes way down when you're 50 years old trying to pick up women at a bar. Just by age.
You'd have to work a lot harder for looks like that.
Or have a lot more money.
Yeah, that too.
But no, I think that's actually a way better answer than I thought I was going to get. It's literally, he feels like, okay, I want what he has. I'm looking at myself. There's got to be hope for me. So that's the self-seeking way out. It's interesting.
Yeah, I think in addition to that, I think he's lonely and needs a friend. And he finds a friend in the one person who appears to be weaker than he feels on the inside.
Okay, that's good too. Yeah, I like that. Yeah, that's really good. Kayla had to go check on the baby.
Oh man. All right.
So but that's interesting. So then we get to the reveal. Are we there yet?
Sure. Keep going.
So we get to the reveal where the one girl that has Jacob's eye ends up being Cal's daughter.
Mm-hmm.
And it's hilarious.
Yeah.
Because they're hanging out in the backyard. And more so than that, the babysitter, was it a letter? What did the mom find in the drawer? Was it pictures or something? Or
yeah, that sounds right. Yeah.
No, the daughter took pictures of herself and was going to mail it to him.
Mm-hmm.
Is that correct? But then at the end, she gives it to Cal's son, because Cal's son, it's just a big love thing. So it's like Cal's son, how old do you think he is? Like 7 or 10 or something?
Oh, he's like, I'd say like 11.
11?
Maybe
it
12.
Has the thing for the babysitter. The babysitter has a thing for Cal. Cal is just lost his way.
He wants his wife and can't have her, or
wants
at
his
least
wife
not
can't
that.
have her.
Then,
yeah, and then wife wants David Lindhagen, but then Cal's oldest daughter, which is not told to you at the beginning of the film that it's his daughter, wants Jacob. Jacob wants her, but Cal and Jacob have this interesting relationship where, they're womanizers, and by the end of the film, they're both womanizers and trying to pick up chicks, and Jacob. So like Cal knows Jacob's past and how he is, and now it comes to the there's a come to Jesus moment where, do I want this guy that's taught me all this stuff to be with my daughter?
Right, and the answer is obviously no.
No, absolutely not. And I think that right there is proof in the pudding that it's immoral.
Mm-hmm. Because why else? Why else would?
Yeah. Why else wouldn't you want that guy? Because at the beginning of the movie, that's the guy to be. That's the guy to be. And at the end of the movie, you don't want to be that guy.
Yeah.
So that would be the proof.
Yeah. So I think a lot of people struggle with, especially a lot of single people, hopefully only single people, struggle with, what should finding a spouse and dating look like? Like, even even Christians who desire to be married, I think there can oftentimes be a struggle of, here I am, I'm trying to attend church, I'm trying to do these things, but I can't. Where am I supposed to find a spouse for example, at a church where everyone's 50 and over, right? There's no one here my age. Where am I supposed to go? So like, maybe you get tempted. Maybe you go to a bar. Yeah, because where else are you going to find somebody, right? And maybe you'll find somebody there. But what do you think about that? I think that's a very real struggle for some people, I would say.
I think it's actually even more challenging than you described, because there's a lot of people who we know who were a part of our church community that have fallen away, however you want to say that, have let's just say they're not living according to what a new creation should live like. So you can't even trust Christian communities in a way. So I think it's even more difficult than the way you're presenting it.
Yeah.
Because if you can't go to a bar, and then on top of that, you go to the youth group, the local youth group, and you can't even trust that, because those people are going to bars or whatever, what do you do?
Right.
I'm so glad that I dated one girl, married her, and had our kids. Like, I'm so glad, because even today with what's going on in the world, not only what we just described as how hard it is as a Christian to date, but then you throw in gender ideology, and you throw in, you darn near need to ask someone for their birth certificate before you even feel comfortable going on a date with them anymore. So I have no idea how to answer that question. I just think people are just up a creek, honestly.
There's just no hope, nothing you can do.
I don't say no hope.
Just hit your knees and pray and hope somebody somebody will have you.
I'm honestly just stressed out,
Yeah.
Kayla and I have even had that conversation. Like, man, I hope neither of us die, because we're gonna have to be single the rest of our lives. Because how do you find a spouse in today's time with, men becoming women and women becoming men, and lack of youth in the church, lack of trust in church.
Mm-hmm.
Those are all things that I would struggle with if I wasn't married.
Yeah.
How do you truly find someone? I was lucky that I found someone through high school. So,
but even then, like, a lot of the stuff that you see in this movie is prevalent in high school too. It was even when I was in high school. That was the case. Partying and things like that.
Well,
so it's
not so much we went to a Christian high school, so you know, we're just tiny bit better.
Well, you did, yeah. You and Kayla.
That's what I meant when I said we.
Yeah,
my wife and I went to the same high school. So,
but yeah, so let's how old are you? You're 30 now, right? So you're
how old are you?
We can talk about that later.
40?
No, I'm not 40.
You're 40?
No, not 40 yet. Now I don't know what I was going to say.
You're 38.
So I'm gonna pick one of your boys, Ronan, 36. Let's say Ronan's 18. So what? You'll be 46 when he's 18?
Yeah,
something like that. So let's say earlier than that. 18's way too old, but he's interested in girls and he's interested in trying to date and ask somebody on a date, and is starting to come to you with questions. All right, is asking you, what do I do? How do I do this? What would be right? What would be wrong? And I'm not, not a list or anything, but what are just some things that you might say, when he's?
Well, I think the first, I think it starts before then, because I think accountability has to be talked about and taught well. You're accountable for your actions. Actions have consequences, and he's 3, so we've already started doing that. Hey, if you don't listen to mom and dad, there's a consequence. We may be okay, we may not be mad, but if you don't put your toys away, you're going to go to stand in the corner, or you're going to get a spanking, or timeouts, or whatever the punishment is. There's always a consequence for an action. And it works both ways, both positive and negatively. So if you do follow directions from mom and dad, then you might get a Reese cup. He loves Reese cups, so we give him Reese cups every now and then. Right now, potty training is a big deal. So if he poops in the potty, he gets a Reese cup.
Reese cups would work for me too.
Yeah. So he's just a big fan of Reese cups. And what are those popsicle things? Those mango? What are they? Are they like icy popsicle things that he likes to eat with you?
Oh no, they're just fruit popsicles.
Okay, just fruit. Well, anyway, ice cream works because he's Kayla's son, and I think that it's important to stress accountability, because as you get older and as you age, as we all know, there's a responsibility. Bigger decisions have bigger consequences, both positive and negative. And if you start there, I think that's a good foundation before you start talking about, okay, who do you think that, what qualities in a man or woman? For our boys, it would be a woman, obviously. What qualities do you look for? Hopefully the response is, well, Dad, you did a pretty good job with Mom. Maybe we emulate something like Mom. Maybe we look for a girl that Mom exemplifies, and we look for those qualities that Mom has to align for a spouse. Also teaching them that dating is a means to an end. It's not this just perpetual thing that goes off into the ether forever and ever. Teaching them that dating is a means to an end, and the end is marriage. Those are some of the bigger concepts that come to mind. Did you have a specific route you wanted to go, or?
Nope. Just asking the question for the sake of discussion, just because I think a lot of people, even Christians, have never had anyone teach them, how do I date according to a Christian worldview? How do I go about finding the person that I'm going to marry according to a Christian worldview? And so just those basic principles, I think, are absent in a lot of ways for a lot of people.
I guess the specifics that come to mind are obviously like understanding what sexual sin is, and there's homosexual sin, and there's also heterosexual sin. And I think that sex outside of marriage, in any form is sinful. So you need to abstain from that. And then also I think having, discipline and boundaries is really, really good. I know that was really important when we started dating. For us, that we set boundaries, and I think that that's just more of a wisdom type thing to prevent you from being in situations that make you susceptible to deception, and kind of like what we talked about in the Jesus Revolution episode, where it becomes very emotional, and sometimes you have to deny your emotion. You have to die to yourself and follow Jesus. You have to die to the call is to come and die, and in order to do that, you might have to what's the word? Suppress your urges in order to be obedient to what the call of Scripture for the new creation that you are in Christ requires you to become. Now, that's not to say that there isn't any hope for those that fall, but the goal is to not fall.
Yeah.
And that's the whole point of boundaries and having wisdom. I also think that it would be very important to, or at least a wise idea, to find someone to mentor you through your dating relationship. Just have like an outside, I guess, set of eyes. And it probably wouldn't be a bad idea to have a girl for the girl and a guy for the guy, and then have, meetings and more of kind of like a life group kind of thing where you're going through Christian marriage and there's a mentorship. Maybe not necessarily marriage counseling, but more of like a dating. I don't even know what you would call it. I'm kind of thinking this off the top of my head.
You would just call it discipleship.
I agree. Yeah, that's probably right. Yeah, just like a dating discipleship or a relationship discipleship situation.
How do I honor God in my newfound dating relationship?
And I think in the Christian church, and Nick, maybe your experience is a little different, but the whole like accountability partner gets a little overused, because accountability partners are great, but they can only hold you accountable for what they know of. And what do we do as sinful people? We don't tell people. We lie.
You lie or you hide it. Yeah.
So we hide it, and then it kind of defeats the whole purpose of the accountability partner. So that's why I always kind of go back, and with our boys, I go back, and we have to lay the foundation of accountability first, and understanding the consequences, and being able to think before you act, and look ahead down the road. Where does this decision lead? And it may be 7 decisions after that the consequence happens, but at least you're training your children, and you're training your young adults to think down, ahead. And I don't think, in my short experience with youth ministry, I don't think that's at least it's not. It's the perception is that it's not done by a lot of parents these days, because what my perception is of parents these days is they are so reactionary in their lives because there's so much going on. The kids got sports and extracurricular, and jobs are kicking off, and maybe the economy's bad and politics are bad, and maybe there's sickness and health problems in the families, and Aunt Janine's got a problem with Uncle John, and there's just all this crap that comes along with family that we all love, essentially. And they just become very reactionary in their life, and then themselves, they stop thinking ahead. So then if you are doing that as a parent, you can't expect your kid to do that, because they're not being taught, and they also don't know how, and then they're going to mimic or mirror your example. So those are just kind of, you use the term word jumble. That's kind of where my head's at.
Yeah, I think that's helpful. I know one thing that I try to, as a dad of a girl, I know one thing I try to like really hammer home is like that there's always a level of like, it's hard to say this because I don't think it's 100% the case, but I want her to believe that she is owed a certain level of attention, if that makes sense, and a certain type of attention. So, for example, this is just a really, really basic, easy thing, and maybe in the grand scheme of things it means a lot, and maybe in the grand scheme of things it really means nothing. But if she ever says, "Dad, will you dance?" I say yes. "Dad, will you dance with me?" 90 to 95% of the time, the answer is yes. Because I want her to think somebody who loves me is supposed to put their time and effort into doing even this with me. So I want her to develop, my goal is that develops over time. And I want her to expect that of whoever it is that's trying to pursue her. That's
really good.
Basic things like that. And then trying to be attentive and listen. Like if she wakes up and tells me about her dream, not just saying, oh yeah, that's nice, honey, but actually listen. Like, oh, was that scary? How'd you feel? And actually, because I want her to equate man with somebody who's supposed to listen. Right. Somebody who's supposed to care about what I'm saying. And so those are just, and I try to reinforce her being stubborn and hard-headed, as counterintuitive as that might seem, because I think we both know that, and it's kind of exemplified in Ryan Gosling's character, if there is a level of a lack of conviction on the female's part, then men who are searching for, who are really trying to get what they want, are able to kind of pick at those things, right? And I want her to have a level of conviction that she's hard-headed about. So I don't discipline sassiness, and I won't. Like, I want her to feel strongly about things. And now, if she does something disrespectful, then yeah, that's going to be disciplined. But
there's a difference between sarcasm or sassiness and disrespect.
Yeah. So those are just because I want her to be strong in her opinions and convictions and knowing what she wants and things like that. So those are some things that come to mind, like from the other side. So your side was, parenting boys.
Do you I think I know what you're going to say to this. Kayla, jump back in here if you want to. But do you think the double standard in raising boys versus girls is part of God's design?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And why? For those that might be listening, and I want to hear your guys' thoughts on that.
So I think that as a female, so I know how I was raised and how I would want to be treated, is not necessarily how I would parent my boys. So now as a mother of two boys, I think a lot of the reason that there is a difference in parenting is their nature. Okay. So men and boys their nature is stronger and not as emotionally tied or the emotions are different, I should say. So the emotions that females emote more frequently are not the same as what boys or men would emote naturally. So, like when Ronan gets upset about something, his anger comes through pretty strong.
You mean his roaring?
Yeah. He roars dinosaur all the time.
It's like, what the heck are you roaring at me for, kid? Knock that off.
So how you parent that, I mean, we want our boys to be strong, but they have to be able to tame that anger, because exactly on the flip side of like what Nick was saying is like there's an expectation of how you treat people. Mm-hmm. So like he's raising his daughter to expect certain things, so we have to raise our sons to ensure that they give that.
Right.
And so I think that if you don't rein in those intense emotions that meant boys emote as boys, that then when they are men, they can't tame that either. And so I think that...
And that's when the consequences become worse.
Way worse.
Right.
And so I think that the reason that the parenting looks so different is because girls are naturally more passive and timid in nature. Just they're more delicate. I mean, I'm sure we could probably multiply how many times that Nick could look at Lincoln the wrong way and she cry versus how intense we have to get with our boys just to get them to listen, let alone actually get another emotion out of them. So
right, and you've said recently, like, he just doesn't care what I think. He doesn't care what I say.
Oh, absolutely.
He doesn't respond to me at all, and that's when I have to go in and.
Yep. So there's definitely a strength to boys that you have to tame. I won't say break, because I agree with Nick. I think it's good to have that strength, and they have to be able to stand on their own 2 feet and be strong men and confident, but you can't go beyond that. You can't go too far. And I think boys tend to go too far, and nobody reins it in early enough. So then as men, they get out of control. But then I think on the flip side, for girls, you cannot come at them that strong, because you'll break them. You'll actually break their spirit, and and like Nick said, like you're teaching, as a father especially, you're teaching your child like what men should look like. And so for daughters, like, you don't want to teach them that men are allowed to yell at you and scream at you and demean you your whole life. Like, that's not the right way to go about it. But you also don't want to say you can get whatever you want out of men.
Right.
If you bat your eyes and smile pretty, you can get whatever you want, because daddy did it. Like, I mean, that's simple, but it's crazy how that translates. Like, if you start looking at people and their childhood and how their parents were, it's amazing how something that simple as daddy always gave her what she wanted, how that turns into an adult woman. That it's amazing to see the correlation.
Where it gets manipulative and
usually down the wrong paths of what they expect or get out of men, or look for out of men too.
Right.
What they seek after. So I definitely think there's a reason that there's a difference between the two of them. And now Nick can come at me and say, "Nah, you're crazy," but having to actually parent both, see, I get the benefit of only having to parent one.
Nick, you're up.
I just agree.
Fair enough.
Yes.
That's all I need to say. Yeah.
Love it. That's awesome. Favorite part of the movie?
Oh, my favorite part, and I laugh out loud just talking about it, is when all of the crazy storylines converge in the backyard.
It's got to be it.
Oh my gosh, it's funny every time you watch it, and how they all. I mean, you get word vomit going on of everybody telling everybody. You get, oh my gosh, that's who you're talking about.
All the guys just start hitting each other.
You get the full on, like, full exemplary of men.
Like an explosion.
It is. And it just keeps going. That's what's crazy.
And the fear on Jacob's face when he realizes that that's Cal's daughter.
Oh, yeah.
The fear of the father is a thing.
Yep. Mm-hmm. Yep. And then when David Lindhagen walks in the backyard and they all look at each other, David Lindhagen? And then Ryan Gosling goes and punches him for Cal. Like, he was just fighting against Cal. And then he goes and punches him for Cal. It's like, oh my gosh. Oh, it's
a really good movie.
Yeah.
I really enjoyed it.
Yeah,
I agree. I think that's the best part. Either that, or just to say something different, it's Steve Carell jumping out of the car at the very beginning. One of those two things are.
Yeah, I would have to agree with the car one. I think both of those are good spots. Nick, we're an hour and 13 minutes in. Do you have any final thoughts?
Nope, not this time. I think we're good.
You good?
Yep.
All right, guys. Thanks for watching. Thanks for listening, and we will see you on the next episode of the WatchWell Podcast. Go watch a movie.